Today we're going to look at how to do regressions on Excel, and we're going to focus on these 5 skills right here. So to begin with, we're going to look at adjusting x-axis. So we're going to do regression on the work we did earlier, looking at GPA and SAT scores. So I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly go ahead and insert a nice little scatter plot of that data. And when I put that scatter plot in, the first thing I'm noticing here is that I have some dead space. I really want on my graph to focus on just what is here. So I'm going to adjust my axes. So these axes right here, so I start at 1.5, I don't need to be starting at 0. So I'm going to just double click right there. And when I double click, this opens up right here. And I'm going to go to my options, my axes options here. This might be closed. You can just open it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the minimum. I'm going to actually change the minimum to about 1.25. I don't want to be right at 1.5, but 1.25 should work just fine. And hit enter. And now it's more spread out. The other thing I notice, I have dead space in this direction as well. So I'm also going to double click here. All right, so I can really focus on my work, and I'm going to actually make the minimum here. Let's see here, made about 1,000. Okay. So now I can really see my data and look at that pattern. I can decide whether we've met our conditions, whether it's straight enough, definitely quantitative. Outliers, I don't have to really deal with any outliers right now. Awesome. Moving on. All right, so now you know the basics for how to adjust the axes. Of course, when you do this graph for real, you will add in your axes labels, format that a little bit more, but it looks good enough for now. We're going to move on to how to standardize your scores. Now, to standardize your scores, you can see this use the z equation, which is just your value minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So to do that, I'm going to need to find the average right here for the GPA. And also standard deviation, just so you know when you're looking for standard deviation, this is a sample. It isn't every single person's GPA, as you can tell. So you're going to use that standard deviation .s. All right. To get it over, I can just go ahead and copy it over, and it will do the same for my SAT scores and do the same for the SAT scores. All right. So now to get that z-score, I'm just going to do the equation for z-scores, which is your value minus your mean. Now I put all this in parentheses because this goes on top of the equation, divided by the standard deviation. Boom. So it looks great. Now I can't autofill it yet because there's 2 things right here. I need them to always stay the same. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and do F4 so that I absolute reference these and they don't change. Now I can go ahead and just autofill them down and it will work great. And I can do the exact same thing for the SAT z-scores. All right, so now I have all the scores that I need. I do want to let you know that there is another way you can do it if you're interested. And the other way to do it is to do it this way. What you do is you hit equals and then the word standardize. Standardize gives you a z-score. You can open up the function equation if you want. You click in your x, you click in your mean, which we know we want to keep, so I'm just going to put that F4 there because I want to absolute reference mean. Standard deviation, again, I want to absolute reference that. And then I say OK, and I just autofill that all the way down, and I can do the exact same thing for the SAT scores as well. Again, standardize, f of x, and you just click everything in. Both methods works fine, so you can choose whichever one you want. So now let's go on to the correlation coefficient. So if we want to do it the long way using the equation that we've talked about before, which you can simply do is do equals, and you are going to add up all of these multiplied together. So I'm going to quickly just stop and do that. All right, so I'll just multiply this. Whoops, wrong one, sorry. That times that, and just autofill that all the way down. All right, and now I can add those up. So you just do sum, add these all up, and I have to divide by, and you're dividing by n minus 1. In this case, I have 8 of these, so it's going to be 8 minus 1. And there we go. Now the way I showed you, you could have some errors and you first have to do counting accurately. So sometimes a nice way to do it is find the correlation very quickly, which is just simply to say equals coral, Okay, that's the Excel version of it. And then you're just going to highlight, sorry about that, we're going to actually highlight your GPA, comma, and then your SATs. Boom. And we're all done. And you'll notice these scores are actually the same. All right. Finding the regression line, you can also do it the long way that we did right here, plugging into the equation. But you also can find the slope and the starting point really quickly by just typing in equal slope. Right? It's right here. And when you type in equal slope, it's going to be the same thing to let you know y's first. So I'm going to do my y's first, comma, and then I'm going to do my x's. And boom, there's my slope. For my intercept, I just type in intercept right here. That's your starting point. And again, I put in my y's first, comma, and then it tells you right there, right over here, then put in my x's. Enter. So now I actually have all of the elements of my equation. They are a little hard to look at like this, so if you want to, you can always kind of shrink them down so that it's a little easier to sort of see what the values are. The very last thing we want to do is actually put the regression line on the scatter plot. All right. So to do this, I'm just going to activate my graph. I'm going to go over to design and down to chart elements, and here we have trend line. We are looking at something linear, so I'm just going to throw that in there. Now, once I throw it in here, I'm going to actually double click on it because I want to do a couple things. So if I come down way over here, I can actually display the equation onto my chart. You'll see that these numbers match these ones right here. Okay. The other thing I might want to do is just thicken this a little bit and give it a slightly different color so it's not the exact same color as my graph, and I also might make it kind of a much thicker line so you can really see it, and actually make it a line instead of a dash. All right, so now it really shows up and you can see what's happening. I can go ahead and move this equation. I can either put it in my title if I want, or move it down and make it larger, whatever I feel like is appropriate for my graph. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, you understand it, and I look forward to seeing your regression lines.